Jim Jones asserts that he had the chance to sign several modern Squitch hip-hop artists in 2009 while working as KO Records' vice president of urban A&R art. During a recent interview on The Art of Dialogue, the Dipset rapper disclosed that he declined tattoo agreements with Drake, J. Cole, and even the Weeknd. J. Cole used to spend all of his time at my studio. I can't state that with complete certainty. Drake, Alan Grumblatt, and the vice president of Coke then allowed me to listen to some of their songs. However, I persisted in telling him that Drake had no image. I didn't comprehend it. Although it failed to connect, he was able to rap his ass off, Jones disclosed. In reference to The Weeknd, Jim Jones explained that his judgment was being affected at the time by a personal tragedy. His close friend Stack Bundles was shot and died the same day they met. Jones asserts despite his mistakes in judgment, he doesn't let the past influence him. Wouldn't that have been pleasant? Yes, it might have been really cool. Who knows though? If it had gone via the channels I had to provide, they might not have achieved the results that came from their efforts. He claimed that even though Jim Jones and Nez had previously communicated civilly, it now seems as though their disagreements are coming up again. The Dipset member's recent comments about being bigger than the CEO of Mass Appeal were taken as a harsh criticism by the followers. In addition, it seems that the Queen's rapper responded by criticizing the Harlem MC. It is a recent collaboration with Raekwon and appears on a supposedly different version of the song The Omiya that was leaked online. In any case, the chef's most recent record, The Emperor's New Clothes, comes after he intensified his criticism of Nas. However, some listeners doubt its veracity because this poem doesn't explicitly connect it to Capo. People should exercise caution since all of this might be a serious mistake. In any case, the poem is clearly angry, and it's simple to see how Near might interpret it in relation to Jones. To be fair, though other names might have been the target of this, Jim Jones is criticizing Nas once more. This time, he's holding Nez accountable for one of his most well-known viral moments. He has insisted that his library has fared better than Nez's, and that he has disliked his work ever since his renowned debut. Illmatic. When he spoke on the Bag Fuel podcast on Wednesday, he brought up the Queensbridge rapper once more. Jones first brought up his beef with Nas during an appearance on a recent Joe and Jada podcast. Jones claimed that Nas' music is crazy, and that he doesn't appreciate him during the exchange. Additionally, he criticized Nay for his recent appearance at Rolling Loud Miami, where he felt it was appropriate to invite 25-year-old Akon to do a surprise guest verse. Jones began by stating that his level of popularity had never been higher when he initially introduced Nas.
I did for Nas probably never been done for him in his life. He's never been that viral at all, ever. He's never been talked about like this ever in his life. Last time he was in some shit like this where people were comparing when him and Jay was, and I don't want to talk about other people's career, but let's just get to the semantics of it.
Fans on social media are becoming weary of Jones's actions, but he hasn't yet discussed the matter with Nas.
We ain't scared of niggas, we red and
Just as their rekindled feud has emerged online, the Queensbridge icon was in his bag that day when Nas clowned Jim Jones in a resurrected video from 2005. Information is leaking out of his bag. Nas was narrating a narrative to an audience in the vintage video when he stated,
Jim Jones, imagine putting a pen to paper to write about him. I'm not anxious to hear the Jim Jones diss record. The niggas that used to have a nigga a little nervous was like B.I.G., Pop, right? Even Cannabis, like Eminem. The niggas used to have you like, we go at it, dog. We gotta go hard. I respect his hustle. I respect his hustle.
Nas clarified that, in contrast to rappers like Biggie, Tupac, Cannabis, and Eminem, Jim Jones never caused anxiety in his peers. Days after Jim Jones stated on the Joe and Jada show that he had more hits than Nas and is more relevant to younger listeners, the footage reappeared. What are your thoughts? When you claimed to be superior to Nas, were you smoking? When Jim Jones recently joined Chad Ochocinco Johnson and Shannon Sharpe on the Nightcap podcast, they couldn't help but question him about Nas. Capo had earlier positioned himself as a larger rapper than Esco during an interview on Fat Joe and Jadakiss's program, which surely generated a lot of shock talk. However, he really stepped it up during this Nightcap performance. The Dipset member provided a thorough justification for his belief in his increased influence.
I'm way more influential than Nas, and I don't care what nobody say. I know I made a little boo-boo when we talk about sales and all this type of shit. I don't feel like getting into that rhetoric about where I started. Nas was nice when I was in high school. When I was in 10th grade, Nas came out. Nas was dope. We appreciated him. He had a little bit run. But Nas always came up second to Jay and DMX and all these other people. Like,
ain't no shame in that. There a lot of mofos came up second to Tom Brady.
He never had that type of influence on us, except for his first album. I already told you, I used to want to dress like Nas because he had a lot of fresh clothes that the hustlers used to wear and shit, and we used to see him on TV. He had one of the illest albums of all time. And then in high school when he had the barbecue and shit like that. So I'm a real fan of Nas, but he kind of lost me after the movie Belly and shit like that.
He also alluded to something that happened between him and the Queens legend.
You dig? And I'm not trying to repeat history, but don't play with us when it comes to that, bro. We already went wild on them boys.
Jones claimed Sharpe posited Esco as the superior lyricist, but Capo doubled down on the style influence, about competitive mentalities. In fact, Sharpe brought up Dipset's verse with the locks and how Jones should probably worry about getting his revenge on Kiss.
Laps around Nas rapping right now, bro. Right now, 2025, I'm in the game still rapping at a high capacity. If Nas wants to smoke, come in the booth. I will rap circles around. That's right. I'm not mad. It's about the sportsmanship of the game. People know I'm a very aggressive person, and I seem to get misconstrued when I'm talking my shit. I'm just talking my shit, you heard? Let me talk my shit because I am on the field. If anybody got a problem with that, they can meet me on the field. That is the proof. Anybody from that era.
Joe and Jim Jones recently stated in an interview with Jadakiss and Fat Joe's podcast that he has no intention of resolving his feud with Styles P or Cameron.
Say, not gonna talk about my brother Styles, and we're not gonna talk about Cam. One, I don't condone that shit, and two, there's a lot more other beautiful shit going on in the world than.
Jada reacted when Jones interrupted to stress that Styles is his brother.
They talk about me and Styles are actually brothers, two brothers that love each other.
You don't gotta explain.
Yeah, I be wanting people to know that, like.
We don't have to get into that because we already know what it is, and they're gonna.
The PSA was released a few weeks after Jones accepted Styles P's challenge to a combat at the Versus. Styles subsequently declared that, in spite of the conflict, he maintains the highest regard for Jones and his body of work. But because of his association with the Lukes, he believes that he is a superior rapper and that his abilities are sometimes disregarded. Only a few months have passed since Jones addressed his long-running conflict with Cameron in his PSA, in which he claimed that Cam was never his buddy and that he only assisted him because he was signed to his label.